Hey everyone, and welcome back to ScarletSprites. Well, today I've got to talk a little bit about this past weekend at LI Retro. The convention takes place at the Cradle of Aviation, and I'll tell you, I hadn't been in the door more than 30 seconds, and I knew that there was something different and there was something special about this. And it really sets a mood and a tone for the entire convention, and I want to talk about that because it's important. You know, a lot of conventions that I walk into nowadays, they're held at expo centers or, what's essentially like a large convention hall. They're kind of lifeless. They're just walls. If you're lucky, there's carpeted floors. Usually they're concrete. And there's just not a whole lot of personality. And this is the complete opposite of that. I'd also say that a lot of modern conventions, you walk in and the merch tables are front and center, right there in front of you. You can't avoid them. And, it really just kind of sets that vibe that, people are going to be selling you stuff. You're here to buy things. And I think when it becomes the focal point, it just becomes a marketplace. And that sucks a little bit of life out of what the whole retro gaming vibe is about. But not here, not at this place. So like I said, this is held at the Cradle of Aviation. It's literally a museum. And it plays right into everything that these guys are trying to do with retro gaming. It's about the history of games, and it's evident as soon as you're in the door. Breaking off to the left, you go into this room that is, it's not a room, it's a hangar. It's literally a hangar with an A-10 Thunderbolt in it, and they have candy cabs lined up and rhythm machines as well. People playing a lot of different fighting games head-to-head, with just these magnificent historical jets in the background. It sets a tone and a mood. Like I said, it's unbelievable. It's hard to put into words until you see it, and you just have these things looming over you. And it's weird because you think to yourself, like, well, what the hell do jets and aviation have to do with video games? Maybe not a whole lot, to be honest, but it's cool as hell, and it's a museum. And I keep coming back to that point because the guys at LI Retro curate their own museum throughout the weekend. And I find that really important. I think that it really is something different that I don't see a lot of places. It gives heart and soul to the entire convention. So while the candy cabs and the jets in the hangar are really cool, you see this on full display when you go upstairs. When you go upstairs to the second floor of the convention, there's a setup that has consoles in ascending chronological order. You can walk through time and watch the progression of video game history, and it's amazing. I don't know that I've seen that level of detail or love put into something at a convention before. All the consoles are hooked up to CRTs, and they're all playable, and they want you to play these things. That's really special because I think this convention does a really good job of clicking with somebody like me who shares this same level of passion. But then there's also this hand extended to the mainstream. People who don't have these consoles in their lives every day may have forgotten and just want to come back for a weekend. And you could just watch people's faces light up. And that was really, over the course of the 2 days that I was there, I saw that happen numerous times. And I was like, yeah, these guys pulled it off. This is the goal here. And they're doing it. And they're doing it, every 15, 20 minutes I'm watching this happen. I think one of my favorite instances was watching a guy sit down and explain the Atari 2600 to presumably his son. And then they got up from that chair, walked around this semicircle a little bit, and ended up, I think it was maybe it was PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 3. And the son is then talking about that. That is, wow, that's magical, right? Like that's what you want to see. And you don't see that type of stuff happen as often when it's all about selling stuff and all about the merchandise, right? Like it just doesn't happen as often. And that really, that moment, I just watched it unfold, and not only did it warm my heart a little bit, but it really clicked for me at that moment. Like look, I'm having a hell of a good time here, and I get all this stuff, and a lot of this stuff, like, I have access to at home in some form or another, but these people don't, and they're loving it. And just for one weekend, maybe they come out, and because the love and attention to detail was put into curating all this, it's just an easy step through, right? And people are able to pick up these controllers and relive part of the past and share it with their loved ones. I don't know. I don't know that I've seen that happen as frequently at a convention as I did this one. Now, venturing away from that area, also on the second floor, is the arcade setup, the North American arcade setup, I guess we'll say. There are a few Vulixes, and I think there's a Neo Geo Candy Cab, maybe a few others on the second floor as well. For the most part, those are down on the first floor. But the wooden cabs that you remember from back in the 80s and 90s are all up here on the second floor. Also one from the 70s, and this was the show highlight for me, getting to see this and finally play a working computer space machine. And, I want to call attention to that too. We shouldn't just skip over that. These are two artifacts that are sitting just out in the open. LI Retro wants you to play these. They want you to experience this. It's not like behind plexiglass or anything like that. They're there for the public to see and enjoy. I talked a little bit to George from One Up Restorations. He did the bulk of the work on the red single player machine that we're seeing here in the video. Delusional's Arcade, I think, worked on the monitor, but overall, yeah, this thing is 100% working. It's playable, it lights up. It's just a true piece of arcade history, and it's here on the floor, and you can play it. The green one on the left is a 2-player machine. It doesn't work yet. I think George said he was going to take a look at that over the next year, maybe have it up and running next year. But yeah, I mean, I've seen a computer space before, and in fact, I saw one this past summer, maybe it was May or early June. It had already been sold. It was wrapped up. It was a green one. I don't think it was playable anyway. I think they told me it was broke. But I had never had the opportunity to play a computer space before. Now, it's not the greatest of games, but, it kicked off an industry, I guess you could say, and it's a relic, and it's here, and you could play it and see it and touch it, and they wanted you to do that. It wasn't like, like I said, it wasn't behind plexiglass or, somebody standing there like, with a velvet rope around it or anything. It was there to experience and enjoy and take in that history, which again, you go down the hallway, this darkened hallway on the second floor, it reminds you of being in an arcade back in the day. There's the ambient light that comes from the machines. There's people playing. It's local multiplayer at its finest. The machines are all working. George is kind of like running around. If anything goes down or needs reset, he's there to do it. Everything was up, running, playable. And, one of the first things he told me when I got there on Saturday, all of these machines have CRTs in them. And he was very excited to tell me that. And, obviously I'm a big CRT fan for when it comes to arcade machines as well. I'm a fan of original hardware in arcade machines. So is he. So is the LI Retro crew. And I think sometimes that can come off as elitist. And in this case, I think you got to be really careful. It doesn't come with any type of judgment or elitist attitude in this case. They're wanting you to experience these games the way they were originally intended, with that CRT monitor running on original hardware. Sometimes I think it's actually a disservice and a slap in the face to people when you presume otherwise, like they won't know any better. That's not the attitude here. They want perfection, and they want to put that out there because that's the love that's being shown at this show. And I felt it all weekend with all the things that they were doing there. And I was not disappointed at all with the arcade setup. I mean, everything was up and running. Was the side art on everything perfect? Of course not, but that's also probably very realistic of the past. No, I think it's about granting people that original, genuine experience. And again, that's what these guys are chasing after, and that's what they're delivering. I did skip over one of the other sections on the first floor, which is, again, quite literally a museum. There's some really cool development systems that are in acrylic cases, again, out on display, set up like a museum. They want you to learn. They want you to experience the history of this. It's just, it's so different from any convention I've been to. There's a PC free play area as well. You can go into this little room and you could play a number of first-person shooters. I saw people playing Oregon Trail at this. It's just unbelievable, really, the amount of video game history on display, but also available for the public to just sit down and either experience or re-experience. And I love that. And I just watched that unfold all weekend. So again, it is a museum. There's some really cool stuff here. If you ever get tired of looking at video games or talking about video games at this place, there's aviation history everywhere. Space stuff. I mean, it's just so cool. You can flip back and forth between these two worlds. I also ran into some really cool people while I was here this weekend. Justin Silverman of Screenwave Media was there. He was actually selling arcade one-ups, and he was doing quite a good job of it, if I remember correctly. I ran into Delusional's Arcade, who I think we both commented, we didn't realize each other, we were tall. that was the takeaway from that conversation, right? Like, I think I'm going to run into Del again in a few weeks here at Retro World. But that was the first time I ever got to meet him face to face. Obviously, One Up Restorations, George, he and I talked a lot. I actually felt bad on Saturday. I think I dominated his time probably more than I should have, just running around looking at everything and getting some input and explanations about where things came from and a little bit of history on some of the stuff that they had there. So it was really cool. I did run into him back at Too Many Games this summer, and we had a really good conversation. So it was like, only been a few months, but it was cool seeing him on his home turf and having him explain everything. And you could tell he was really proud of a lot of the stuff that he had there, as he should be. Of course, I also ran into the affable John Riggs. We didn't have a lot of time to catch up and stuff. John was doing a lot of things there, as was I, but snapped one pic. And actually, it's like the only picture I have with somebody. I'm talking about Justin and George and Delusional's Arcade, and I didn't get pictures with any of these guys, but thankfully John snapped this pic before we had to part ways. So speaking of George, aka One Up Restorations, he did help me with the panel presentation I did at LI Retro, which was Neo Geo, the gateway drug to arcade gaming. The panel was in a planetarium. It was in a planetarium, people. I mean, this place, this convention, every time I thought that I couldn't be more surprised by something, I was just wowed again. And I walked into this planetarium. I'm basically sitting in the pit of what is essentially a medium-sized IMAX theater. And my pictures and slides and things for my presentation are like up on this big, behind me, like on an IMAX screen almost. And I'm getting distracted, like doing my own presentation, because I want to turn around and look at everything and just be like encompassed in oversized arcade machines. It was just really surreal. Had such a good time doing this. I think if I had known I was going to be in the planetarium, I would have changed my visuals up a little bit more. But doing a panel presentation in a planetarium, when am I ever going to have the chance to do that again? And, it happened. Sunday, it happened. So if it's not obvious, I had one hell of a good time at LI Retro. Just getting to play arcade machines, getting to talk to people who watch the channel. I learned things at LI Retro. I had no idea there was a karaoke peripheral for the Dreamcast. I didn't know that existed, but there it was on display. I could read about it, learn about it, see it, and not just see things and get educated on them, but touch these things, play them. That's the emphasis. They want to share. They want to share the passion and the love that they have for these games with everyone else who maybe either didn't know that this stuff existed or who doesn't have access to it or has forgotten. And it's just very evident. It's very evident. And, I don't know how many different ways I can say it. This show is put on with love. I think I was just shocked and surprised by all of this. I've been to a lot of conventions. I've been to a lot of different cities, different venues. For the most part, I would say, 80% of the, you know what to expect, but this is different. And, it's hard to really put into words and explain it unless you were there. but you can just tell the games and the history matter. They matter to these people. And just the way this whole thing is put on and curated, you can tell it matters. One of the nicest things I think that was said to me during the weekend was Sunday afternoon before I left. I was talking with Gene, who does a lot of the PR and media for LI Retro. And I think he could read it on my face. I think he saw a lot of my reactions, you know, when we were walking through different rooms. But he said, you know, Joe, I think if you could put on a convention, this is what you would do. And that meant a lot to me because it means he understands me. And in turn, I also understand them. He's right. This is a show that I would put on. This is what I would want. If I could put on my own exhibition, this is what I would do. It's just all love. It's all genuine experiences. And it's sharing that with people. And he's right. This is what I would want to do if I could. So, you know, with that, I don't know what else there is to say. I had a great time. I want to thank everybody. George, Joel, Gene, thank you so much for having me this past weekend. I had a great time. I actually got to sleep for a change too. I slept 9 straight hours, which doesn't happen very often with a baby anymore. So I appreciate that little bonus as well. But thanks so much for checking out today's video, hearing a little bit about my experience at LI Retro. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you all next time. Later, guys.